Hello and welcome to your next session on Current Affairs SAAR. So this is the program that is brought to you by Mentora IAS, and this will be a 16-month long comprehensive coverage of current affairs from January 2025 to April 2026. We are going to start with the subject of Indian polity again. So if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe to it. And subsequently, you also have your first video on polity that has already been done, where we have extensively discussed about the Armed Forces Special Power Act. Please go and watch that particular video as well, so that you have full end-to-end coverage. And do not forget to subscribe and comment on this particular video, so that we can understand you are able to understand this or not. And please be very open about asking your questions. So let us begin this particular session. These are our social media handles. We are active on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube and Telegram. You may join any of the channels. The official handles are here. The QR codes are here, and you may join any of them by scanning the QR code or going to our official handles. We have a lot of activities which will be going on here, and at the same time what is also going to happen is that we have all your detailed handouts of every such video which has been released on this particular channel in the Telegram post. Okay, so the Telegram basically is the place where you have all the detailed handouts of every single current affairs video that is there on the channel. So do not forget subscribing to our Telegram channel. We'll also be uploading more value added content, but only till the extent that is required for you, not overloading you with any other noise. Okay, so here all the questions and every particular topic that has been selected has been curated carefully, so that you get only those topics which have the highest probability of coming in the examination. So that is the kind of quality we are going to deliver to you. इस चीज को ध्यान में रखना कि यहाँ पे हम मजाक नहीं करने वाले हैं आपके अटेम्प्ट के साथ. हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव ही यही है कि आप लबासना तक पहुंचो और लबासना से ग्रेजुएट होकर एक अच्छे सिविल सर्वेंट बनो. सो नो you can say dilly dally on your entire attempt. We are only going to give you the best and at the same time only the relevant stuff, nothing else. Okay, तो चलो आज की वीडियो चालू करते हैं. Let us begin with नीति आयोग. जनवरी 2025 की कवरेज चल रही है. सो जनवरी 2025 में we basically also had 10 years of completion of the नीति आयोग constitution. Okay, so we need to discuss नीति आयोग on that particular light. डिटेल डिस्कशन पॉलिटी में जरूर होगा क्योंकि 10 इयर्स हुए हैं. सो दैट इज व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस हियर, द 10 ईयर एनिवर्सरी ऑफ नीति आयोग. ओके, सो व्हाट एग्जैक्टली शुड यू रीड अबाउट नीति आयोग? If you have Lakshmikant, that is fine. If you want to read it over the internet from the NITI Aayog website, that is completely fine. But what do you need to read? That is very, very important. The first thing that you should be knowing is what exactly is the NITI Aayog and why exactly is it under existence. Okay, why exactly has that been formed? The second thing, what exactly is the institutional framework? How this particular body has come into being? Okay, is it a constitutional body? Is it a statutory body? Is it an executive body? What exactly is the kind of body? So the first thing that you need to understand is kind of body. Okay, there are three kinds of bodies. So what kind of body is this? The second thing, okay, the composition of the NITI Aayog. Who exactly is holding which position? Okay, and then subsequently you also need to understand what exactly is the intersection of government, that is basically political executive, and the permanent executive. Okay, now you might be getting confused what exactly is the political executive and what is the permanent executive. So देखो, political executive is basically the executive which is elected. So these are basically the members, these are basically the ministers. ठीक है, तो जो ministers होते हैं they basically collectively are called political executive who have a tenure to serve. Okay, the permanent executive is basically the executive which actually comprises the civil servants. They are the support staff of grade B, C, which are actually employed by the central government. Okay, so they are all basically the permanent executive because they are going to serve the government till their retirement age. So they do not have a tenure, they have a retirement age. When you talk about political executive, they have a tenure of 5 years. Okay, so in order to become a minister, you basically need to fight elections, and after getting through the elections, getting a seat in the parliament in any of the legislatures, what you have to be now doing, you basically need to be recommended by the head of the real executive, that is the prime minister at the central level, to become a minister. ठीक है, तो This is basically what we need to understand. Then what exactly is the functions? What exactly are the major functions of NITI Aayog? You need not remember all of them, but at least you should be knowing what exactly is the objective of this particular body. And then subsequently what we need to know is basically what are the various programs or the reports that this particular body actually publishes. कई बार ये question पूछा जाता है कि what index or for that matter what exactly is the report that is being published by which institution, both national as well as international. तो ये पढ़ना बड़ा important है, ठीक है? So now let us begin with the question. So if you know this particular answer, please pause and comment. नहीं पता है, don't worry, pause, read the question and then we'll solve it. Okay? So you can pause the video now and read the question. So okay, let us first of all begin with what exactly is NITI Aayog. So NITI is an acronym. Okay, it's an acronym. What do you mean by an acronym? Or acronym, as I'm saying it in a fast tone. So acronym is basically any word which is actually a short form of something larger, but this is something which can be pronounced as a word. जैसे नीति, नीति basically in Hindi means life, okay, or for that matter policy. Niti is a kind of policy, but NITI in itself actually expands to National Institution for Transforming India. That is basically the full form of NITI. You have to first of all understand this. Okay, so that is basically what an acronym is, which can be pronounced as a word, but it actually expands into a larger full form. तो ये एक ऐसा short form है जो कि word के जैसा होता है. ठीक है? So that is NITI, National Institution for Transforming India. Now this is basically a think tank. It means that it is the go-to agency when the government wants to have some research done on a particular matter or some aspect of policy making. Why? Because the government does not have the time to understand and analyze the nitty-gritties of everything. So that is why what they do, they outsource this job. To whom? To a group of individual experts who have been doing this for a very long period of time. And why do you want to do this? So that you have some credible data, some credible observations and some credible ideas in order to solve the peculiar problems of the country of today. So that is why this is basically a think tank. A lot of individuals are actually deployed here who are experts in various fields. Okay, this was established in 2015. On 1st of January 2015, it came into being and it replaced the erstwhile Planning Commission. So Planning Commission was basically a body that came into being right from the time of our independence. At that particular time, we basically were very inspired with the planned method of development adopted in the Soviet Union. Okay, so what was seen by the Indian national leaders at that particular time was that if we have planned economic development, we are able to first of all focus on the various aspects of development, and second thing what we are able to do is that we are able to judiciously use our resources to reach to a development stage much faster than the other ways. So that is why the Planning Commission was expected to give 5-year plans which were to be implemented over a horizon of 5 years, so that these plans are going to have certain targets to be achieved by all the states of the country, so that the national objectives are the one which are largely achieved. Okay, so these 5-year plans were basically given and they were criticized for being completely isolated from the daily world problems of the governments, state level governments, the local level governments and the people. Okay, so that is why in order to correct this policy, the Government of India, after the 2014 general elections, when the National Democratic Alliance took the helm of the affairs, so the NITI Aayog was basically constituted to replace the Planning Commission. And this particular replacement was not just a namesake replacement, the entire approach of actually dealing with the problems and then understanding and solving these problems changed. Okay? So this was basically a body which was established by an executive resolution. Basically it means that the body was established on a government order. Okay, on a government order or notification. Okay, so this means what? This means that NITI is not a constitutional body. It is not a constitutional body or a statutory body. Now, when you talk about a constitutional body, now this is any such body which has been mentioned in the Constitution of India. So, whatever is mentioned in the Constitution of India basically is a permanent kind of body that has to exist. For example, Election Commission of India. For example, Union Public Service Commission. Okay. So, these are such bodies which are mentioned in the Constitution of India and they have to exist at all times. Okay. Now, there are many bodies which are not mentioned in the Constitution of India, but these bodies have been established based upon the need of the time. For example, you have the National Human Rights Commission, you have the National Green Tribunal. Now, these are basically the organizations that have been established after enacting a law. Okay. So, after you enact a law, so these become statutory body. So, statute basically means law. Okay. So, a law of the parliament actually establishes these bodies. And the third kind of bodies that are actually established are the ones which are established when the government needs them to be established. So, they do not have any kind of legal sanction in the sense that the parliament has not approved of their establishment. The constitution does not talk about it. It is the government which felt that there is a need, that we need such a body to assist our work. So, those bodies are actually established by the executive resolution. So, NITI Aayog is basically a body which is actually you can say established by an executive resolution or a government order. Now, let us talk about the composition of NITI Aayog. So, NITI Aayog is basically headed by the Prime Minister of India, and subsequently the Prime Minister of India also nominates at most 4 ex officio members. Okay, so these ex officio members are actually the Union Cabinet Ministers. Okay, these are Union Cabinet Ministers who are nominated by the Prime Minister, and they can be at most 4, not more than that. Okay. Then there is a vice chairperson appointed by Prime Minister. Okay, appointed by Prime Minister. Then at the same time there are certain full-time members. Okay, so these full-time members are basically the program directors of various of the departments of the government. Then there are special invitees. So, special invitees are basically the individuals who are experts in various fields. So, they may be called upon for many of the meetings or many of the policy making decisions of the NITI Aayog. So, no decisions are made as such, but the point is deliberating upon a policy, needing an expert opinion. There you may have a special invitee. Okay, so experts in various fields. Then at the same time there is a chief executive officer. Now, this particular individual is also appointed for a fixed term. Okay, appointed for a fixed term by the Prime Minister. This is something that we need to understand. Okay, and then there is a governing council. So, governing council basically comprises all chief ministers of states and Delhi and Puducherry. So, in the current scenario, the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir also has been considered here as a state for this particular purpose, not by me. Okay. Then the next thing, it also includes all lieutenant governors or administrators of union territories. Okay, they are all a part of the governing council, and this is basically what is the composition of the NITI Aayog. I hope this is something which is clear with everyone. Okay, so now let us talk about the question. Consider the following statements about National Institution for Transforming India, that is NITI Aayog. And the question is, the first statement, it is a statutory body instituted in 2015 to replace the Planning Commission. So this particular statement is wrong. Okay. The President of India acts as the ex officio chairperson of the NITI Aayog. We have seen this is also wrong. Now the directive statement. Which of the above statements is or are incorrect? So you have to tell which of them are incorrect. So we see that both of these statements are actually incorrect. So the correct answer here would be option C. Why? Because both of them are wrong statements and we are asked to point out the wrong statements. So we know that it is not a statutory body, it is an executive body. Yes, it does replace the planning commission, but not with this nature. The second thing, the chairperson of NITI Aayog is the Prime Minister of India, not the President of India. Okay, so that's the correct answer. So that is why both the statements are wrong. I hope this is clear, and I hope the ones who have given the correct answer, they have taken into account this particular word. You will find both the kinds of questions in UPSC. So please do not be surprised that we are basically trying to choose the wrong statements here. Okay. Now, let us talk about the next one. What exactly are the broad functions of NITI Aayog? So NITI Aayog provides its policy inputs with respect to policy formulation. So any kind of policy that the government wants to formulate for various kinds of problems to address various type of situations, it may seek an advice from the NITI Aayog. So that is the first one, policy formulation. The second one, it basically is also responsible for tracking the progress of various welfare related schemes, especially for the rural sector and for the socio-economic welfare of the country. Okay, so it monitors and at the same time it also evaluates what exactly has been the progress made by the various states, various union territories down to the level of the you can say local governments. Okay, then it basically is there to foster cooperative federalism where the center and the state, both of them come together to solve the problems jointly and align the goals towards the national development. There cannot be any kind of regional goals that can be superseding or superimposing the national development goal. So national development and state development have to go hand in hand, and in order to do that, both the governments should be harmoniously working together. So that is cooperative federalism. Then strategic and technical advice to the government. So this particular advisory service is not just for the central government. Even the state governments can seek advice from the NITI Aayog in order to you can say solve many of their problems. Okay. One such example is basically the building of a retaining wall in the coastal regions of the country in order to protect the coastal communities from the storm surge that comes during the cyclone. So that particular problem has been referred to the NITI Aayog by many of the governments like West Bengal. Okay, then intergovernmental coordination. So this basically ensures that not just the coordination between the center and the states, but even within the same level of the government, between the ministries as well. So interministerial coordination is also something which is taken up, and the measures to improve that efficiency is also you can say advised to the government by the NITI Aayog. Then to build a research and knowledge hub by leveraging the human capacity for the country, so that what happens is that we have innovative solutions, out of the box solutions which can be custom made, tailor made according to the situations. So basically it is a repository that is being made out of the extensive research and expertise of the various you can say individual. Then it is basically the body which is responsible for the implementation of the sustainable development goals and at the same time monitoring them at the subnational level. So this is basically the institution required for it. Then capacity building, how to leverage the demographic dividend of the country so that the people of India, the young generation of India is not only meaningfully engaged but also ready with market level skills. So whatever skills are required in the market, in order to bridge that particular gap of skill deficit, what steps need to be taken, what kind of courses need to be introduced, that is something that they come up with. And finally, innovation promotion, that the indigenous promotion of innovation is basically to be handled by the NITI Aayog. So these are the major functions of NITI Aayog. Details will be discussed in Indian Polity. Okay. Now let's go to the next question. Consider the following indices. Logistics is across different states index, leads index, India Innovation Index, SDG India Index. Which of the above index or indices are released by the NITI Aayog? So this basically takes us to the next one. What are the flagship publications or what are the indices or index that are released by the institution? So we basically have to identify which of them are actually released by the NITI Aayog. Okay, so when we talk about the major indices that come from the NITI Aayog side, so I told you that this is basically the organization responsible for monitoring the implementation of the sustainable development goals in the country and at the same time monitoring their sub-national progress, that within the nation what is the progress of various you can say states. Okay, so SDG India Index is basically one of the indices that is released by NITI Aayog. The second one is India Innovation Index, that basically ranks the various states with respect to what exactly is the progress made on new innovations, what are the number of patents that have been formed, what exactly have been the various kinds of breakthrough technologies on which the various states have been making progress. Okay. School Education Quality Index, that is basically to ascertain that the school level education in India has a minimum quality average throughout the country. So that is basically the one. The most recent one that has been released by it is basically called the Fiscal Health Index. That has been released for the first time in 2025, and one which has been discontinued is basically the Composite Water Management Index. Now this was basically to understand the water resources of the country and what exactly has been the utilization of this by the various states and the local level governments. Okay, so these are basically the major indices released by the NITI Aayog. So going back to the question, so we have seen that consider the following indices: Logistics Ease Across Different States Index, India Innovation Index, and SDG India Index. So we have seen that India Innovation Index and SDG India Index. Now these are the two which are released by NITI Aayog. When you talk about the LEADS Index, this is basically given by Ministry of Commerce. Okay. So Ministry of Commerce basically comes up with this particular index. So this is another knowledge point for you. Please remember this. So the correct answer here would be option C, 2 and 3. Okay. So I hope this is something which is clear. Now let us go to the next question. Consider the following statements about Aspirational Districts Program. Okay. So it was launched in 2018 to effectively transform 112 of the most backward districts of the country. The Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is responsible for the progress of this scheme. Which of the above statements is or are correct? You can pause and you may give this particular answer if you want. Okay. So when we talk about the Aspirational Districts Program, so Aspirational Districts Program is basically first of all about identifying the most backward districts of the country based upon the socio-economic indicators. Out of those districts, what we have to prioritize is what exactly are they best at. Okay. So Aspirational Districts Program first of all wants to reverse the concept of backwardness of any district in the country. So for this, what has happened is that 112 districts of the entire country have been listed out for this particular implementation of the program. And here first of all, an in-depth grassroots level you can say research has been done in order to understand what exactly are the strengths of these particular regions, what exactly are the strengths of these districts, and based upon the strength of this particular districts, it has then been said that whatever are the low hanging fruits, whatever are their strengths, they must be encouraged, and those such measures they will then take up the whole concept of socio-economic indicators first of all forward. You have to first of all improve the livelihood situation of the people. That can be done using this, what are they best at. Okay. The second thing, after that is done, we are going to have certain programs which are implemented in a structured format so that the socio-economic gap is something which is reduced, and finally these districts are one of the best in the country. So they basically implement a model of both cooperative federalism as well as competitive federalism. So here all these 112 districts of the country basically are being nurtured based upon the strengths that they have and the hand holding on the things that they do not have, and subsequently they are also being given targets on which are they evaluated, that how exactly are they performing. Okay, so they basically have borne some really nice fruits. Now this particular program is right now anchored by the NITI Aayog. Okay, so this is not something which is implemented or monitored by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. This is something which is being done by the NITI Aayog. So Aspirational Districts Program is something which is monitored and tracked for its progress by NITI Aayog. So the first statement is correct. It was launched in 2018, but this is something which is wrong. The correct answer of this would be NITI. Okay. So the correct answer here would be only the first option. Okay, that the first statement is correct, the second one is incorrect. Okay, so I hope this particular question was the one that you could answer well. Okay, now let's go towards the next topic, the 8th Pay Commission. Okay, so in January 2025, again, one of the most important announcements made by the government was the constitution of the 8th Pay Commission. Okay, now with respect to this particular 8th Pay Commission, what do we need to understand? So we need to first of all understand what exactly are central pay commissions. Okay, what are central pay commissions, what exactly is their objective, and how exactly do they play a role with respect to the you can say the budgetary responsibility of the government and the fiscal health of the government. Okay, so that is what we need to understand. So the first thing that we need to understand is what is the central pay commission. Okay, then we will be talking about what exactly are the important roles that this particular commission plays. So before we go there, consider this question and try answering it. Okay, so you may pause the video now and you can answer this question. So let us first of all understand what exactly this question wants to say. So this question first of all tells you that there is a particular body called the Central Pay Commission. So when this particular commission is constituted, what is the time? Okay, in how many years roughly can you expect a Central Pay Commission to be constituted, and by which government? Okay, central government or the state government. So that is something which is clear. Central Pay Commission will come from the central government, but in how many years is it constituted? That's the first part. The second one, okay, so what exactly is the primary focus of this particular commission? To discuss the wage or the salaries of the central government employees. Okay, so now the point is that if you are discussing the salaries of these employees, so they are to be given by the government. So the second statement is basically about what part of the expenditure of the government does the salaries become be a heading entry. Okay, so we have to understand this. So this is basically a question on budget. This statement comes from the budget. The first one is basically a general statement. So this is what we have to understand, what exactly is the difference. Okay, so this is the thing. So let us first of all understand what is Central Pay Commission. Okay, so the Central Pay Commission is basically a high powered body that is constituted by the union government every 10 years. So after every 10 years we basically have the union government constituting this particular body, and this particular body's primary objective is to review the salary structure of the central government employees. Okay, so the central government employees also include not just the members of the permanent executive, but also the employees of the central public sector undertaking, the employees of the military forces of the country. So they are all basically the ones who are considered to be employed by the central government. So what exactly is going to be the benefits? What exactly will be their salaries? That is what that is to be reviewed by them. Okay, so that is basically the Central Pay Commission. Now when we talk about the 8th Pay Commission, so 8th Pay Commission was constituted in January 2025, but the members and the terms of references were not, you can say they were not identified, they were not laid down. Okay, only recently the terms of reference have been finalized. So terms of reference basically tells you what exactly is the mandate of this particular commission, what exactly this commission is going to talk about. So they have been recently, very recently they have been you can say finalized, and the current composition of this particular commission is that it is headed by Justice Ranjana Prakash Desai, a former Supreme Court judge, currently the chairperson of India Press Council. Okay, and she is currently the chair of this particular body. Then the part-time member is Professor Pular Ghosh from IIM Bangalore, and the member secretary is basically the Secretary of Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Pankaj Jain. Okay, so this is a 3-member body which will be deliberating and reviewing the situation of the pay packages and compensation of all the central government employees, and this particular commission has been given 18 months. Okay, 18 months from January 2025 to present their recommendations to the central government. Now whatever their recommendations are, that recommendations will be applied retrospectively. Okay, applied retrospectively. That means that this particular commission is going to first of all submit their, you can say they are going to submit their recommendations by April 2026. Okay, April 2026 is roughly the time when this particular, June 2026 is roughly the time when this is going to be the, you can say tenure, when they have to submit this. But the point is their recommendations are going to be applied effective from January 1, 2026. Okay, so from January 1, 2026, it is expected to be applied from. Okay, so although the recommendations are going to come late, but the salary computation that will be done from January 1. So whatever would be the difference of the salaries on every single month before the full implementation, that will be provided to the central government employees as a compensation. So this is basically what is the 8th pay commission going to do. Okay. So this particular commission is constituted every 10 years. This is something that we have understood. Okay. Now the point is that when we talk about the salaries that are to be paid by the government to their employees, now this particular salary forms a part of which kind of expenditure? So first of all, we have to understand that under Article 112 of the Constitution of India, there is something called an annual financial statement that is to be given or to be laid. Okay, annual financial statement to be laid or tabled in both houses of the parliament. Okay, both houses of parliament, and this is something which you actually call as the budget. Okay, now the point being, when you talk about this particular thing, so it is the president who is going to ensure, okay, president to ensure that the government, the central government is going to lay down the annual financial statement. Now this annual financial statement basically has two different things. Okay, it has the account of receipts and expenditure of previous year. This is the first thing. And the next thing, estimates of accounts or estimates of revenue and expenditure of this year. Okay, what the government expects to earn this year and spend this year, that's the one part of it, and what it has earned last year and what it has spent last year, that is the second part. Okay, so this is basically to be presented to both the houses of the parliament, with the primary discussion taking place in Lok Sabha. Okay, so this is basically done in order to bring in the accountability, and this is one of the functions of the parliament to ensure financial accountability of the government of India. Okay, so it is to ensure that the government is not overspending, it is not misutilizing funds, there is minimal error, and that is not having any kind of corruption that is going through. Okay, so now what happens is that when we talk about the salaries which are to be given by the government, so these salaries basically form a part of the expenditure of the government. But this particular expenditure is the one which is a running expenditure. This has to be given every single month to the employees. So that is why such an expenditure is classified as a revenue expenditure. Okay, it is called a revenue expenditure. So revenue expenditure basically means that in order to keep the government running, in order to keep this revenue flowing, what is the amount of money that you are going to spend? Okay, so that is something which is actually a part of the revenue expenditure, and the salaries of the employees of the central government also form a part of the revenue expenditure. Now the second kind of expenditure that is there is basically capital expenditure. So capital expenditure basically means that you are trying to develop some kind of assets, like you are trying to invest in the infrastructure projects. So these infrastructure projects are basically the ones which are not going to immediately turn back revenue to you, but in the long run these are going to be very beneficial for the country. So they are called capital expenditure. So all the loans, okay, repayment of the loans, all the kinds of interest that we have to service, they are basically the ones which actually go to capital expenditure. Okay, so they basically are long term things. Revenue expenditure is something which is short term, which is day to day. Okay, so that is why the employees who are actually employed by the central government, they are paid out of this particular heading called the revenue expenditure. Okay, so now going to the question. Consider the following statements about Central Pay Commission. It is constituted every 5 years to review the remuneration of the central government employees. Wrong. It is constituted every 10 years. That is why we are right now in the 8th commission. Okay, so we are basically moving towards the 80th anniversary of our independence in 5 years, 2027. So it is constituted every 10 years. That is how we are reaching to the 8th one right now. Okay, and it is usually, it is not something which is going to be mandatorily done, it is usually done. Then at the same time, the salaries which are paid to the central government officials, that basically forms a part of the revenue expenditure of the union government. This is absolutely correct. So now what we have to see, which of the following statements is or are correct. So the correct statement here would be option B. Okay, only 2. That would be the correct statement here. So I hope this particular question is clear. Okay, and you have understood what exactly is revenue expenditure. See, you are going to understand these things in detail when you are going to do your Indian polity. As of now, you need to understand what they mean in the you can say simplest of the terms. Okay. Now, with respect to the reviewing of the you can say the salaries, why exactly is it required? This is required because of a very significant concept that is called inflation. Okay, so you basically talk about inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is something which means that the prices are continuously rising. But prices of what are continuously rising? Whatever you want to consume. That could be food, that could be services, that could be for that matter fuel. So anything that you are consuming, you are paying higher price than what you were paying back in the day. Okay, so let us say that once upon a time, the a 50 gram Cadbury used to cost 15 rupees or 20 rupees. Today, a 45 gram Cadbury actually costs you 30 rupees. Okay, so technically you are paying more and you are getting less. So what does this mean? Inflation, first of all, one of the first impacts of inflation is erosion. It is basically the erosion of value of money, and subsequently because of this what happens is that there is reduction in purchasing power. Okay, you basically want to purchase something but you do not have sufficient money to purchase the same quantity that you used to purchase in the past. In the past, let us say that you basically could buy 2 kilos of potatoes at 20 rupees. Today you are able to buy only 1 kilo or maybe 750 grams of potatoes in 20 rupees. So technically you require 2 kilos of potatoes for yourself, but in the same cost right now you are getting 750 grams. So your purchasing power is limited because the value of the money has eroded over time. And because of this what happens is that people basically have to shell out more money in order to keep their consumption levels standing out at the constant level. Because you cannot be changing your consumption level drastically. You may be doing it for certain goods, but at least for food you may not be doing it drastically. So that is why in order to compensate the people, in order to ensure that their wages actually match the inflation, so that when they are actually giving out this particular money, they still have some money to save. We have to review the wages or the salaries periodically. Okay, that is basically why the inflation is something that needs to be counteracted. Now, in order to measure inflation in India, we have multiple kinds of indices. Okay, inflation is measured at various levels. It is measured at the wholesale level. That is something that you might be knowing as the wholesale price index, WPI. It is measured especially at the level of consumers. Okay, so at the consumer level it is called CPI, consumer price index. But even in the level of consumers, we basically have multiple categories of consumers. Okay, the consumers may be situated in rural areas. Okay, they may be situated in urban areas. Then there is a special computation of you can say consumers who are actually industrial workers. Okay, so these are the various categories under which the consumer price index is actually measured. Now the consumer price index basically tells us that there is a defined basket of goods, that there are certain quantities of goods and services that a consumer wants to consume. But in order to purchase all of these, what exactly is the amount of money that you need to shell out? And we compare these prices with the past prices, and subsequently then we get to understand, has the inflation risen, or for that matter has the income of the individuals has risen. Okay, so that is why inflation is something which needs to be tackled, and it is tackled in a multi-pronged way. Okay, in one way you basically see the Reserve Bank of India, it basically talks about tackling inflation. It is one of its core mandates. Okay, and it does that by tweaking the various rates like the repo rate and reverse repo rate and things like those. But at the same time the government also has to do something about it. The government does this by ensuring that the government employees at least have got some proper proportionate compensation, so that they do not feel that all the money that they are earning is just going in consumption. And based upon this 7th pay or 8th pay commission, what also happens is that a lot of influence is then coming up with respect to the private sector as well. So private sector salary negotiations also are getting influence because of the pay commission and the revisions that are being made. Okay, so that is basically the importance of the pay commission. Now let us talk about this particular question. The dearness allowance paid to the central government employees is based on which of the following index? So you can pause the video and you can give the answer if you have the answer ready. Okay, so when you talk about this particular question, dearness allowance. Okay, so dearness allowance, here dearness basically relates to price. Okay, so when price rises, the commodity, whatever you want to purchase, becomes dearer. Okay, it is something which is more expensive, so that is something that you would have to, you can say, spend or consume wisely. So in order to compensate or keep pace with respect to the rising inflation, because inflation is something that does not rise in an year, it is something which can rise overnight. Let us say the entire oil supply stops from a particular country to India. So that is going to significantly, you can say, affect the demand of the oil that is present in the country. The oil prices are going to shoot up. And when the oil prices are going to shoot up, the cost of transportation is going to shoot up. Cost of transportations, you can say, increase in cost is then going to be paid by the consumer ultimately. So the cost of everything is going to go up. So that is why inflation is something which is pretty dynamic. Okay, so that is why the inflation with respect to the year is actually compensated by something called dearness allowance. Okay, so dearness allowance is usually revised every 6 months to ensure that the salaries of the government employees keeps pace with the rising inflation and costs. Okay, so subsequently the government also would need some kind of standard metric in order to do this. So what exactly is that particular index? Okay, so that particular index is actually the consumer price index for industrial workers. Okay, the government does not use any of these. Okay, consumer food price index is basically one of the indices that comes up, but the point is that consumer price index for industrial workers is basically taken up as the reference for deciding the dearness allowance of all the central government employees. Okay, now consumer price index for industrial workers is actually released by the Ministry of Labor and Employment. Okay, Ministry of Labor and Employment. Okay, now with respect to the other three, they are basically released by Central Statistical Office or Central Statistics Office. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI. Okay, so remember this as well. Sometimes this question also comes up. Which of the ministries actually comes up with the consumer food price index for industrial workers? So it is the Ministry of Labor and Employment, not MOSPI. Okay. So this is all basically for this particular session where we have covered two topics with in relation to polity, and I hope that you could find the questions easy, and at the same time you are able to understand what are the logics behind question. I really hope that all of you who have actually attempted these questions, you are trying to understand how exactly the questions are being asked in UPSC, what is the depth of knowledge that you require here, and if there are any doubts, please let us know so that we can help you out with respect to your doubts, and at the same time we also come out with a better, more oriented product for yourself. Okay, so see you next time. Till then, thank you, take care.